Now we're live now.
We're live now?
We're live now. You can, if you want to, Professor Fern, no, Dr. Fern, you can reblog the post that I just made.
Okay, hold on. Wait. Oh, okay, here we go.
Check whether I have, the sound set correctly.
And here we go. Yes. And reblog. And then do this. And do this. Wow, this is a really interesting way to start the show, isn't it? Wait, not Lux.
It's okay. Let's start.
Color and reblog. Okay, we're done.
I'm gonna start the intro now.
Now.
Yes. Hello and welcome to In Conversation 10. Who would have thought that we'll be on a 10th show one day?
I know, right?
Well, today's a very, very special show. Not only because it's a jubilee, but because we have another guest on this show. So it's our, did I count correctly, fourth guest already? Christina, Billy, Heiko, and now
Tiernan. And Chris.
Yeah, that's what I said. Chris, Christina. Milman Harris is on the chat. Hi, Milman, and hello.
It's so funny. I'm just looking at his "I was once like you are now" photo. I'm just looking at it right now when you said that.
See, no coincidence.
Hey, Milman, you're going to be on next month, right? If you or the month after.
There's always a slight little delay between the stream and the chat, so it's about 20 seconds. So let me first, before we start, there's something I need to say before we really start, because I didn't do that in the last shows, and there's something that Heiko is also on the chat. Hi, Heiko. There is someone I really need to send our big thank yous, and that is my friend Gia from Los Angeles, who helps us a lot with the show notes. So she's sitting there watching the show, and because she can't do that while the show is running, because we don't have timestamps during the live stream, she not only watches us live, but also listens to the crap that we're telling a second time while writing the show notes. So thank you kindly, Gia. And Fern just told me while we were offline that he will drive the small little way from San Francisco to Los Angeles to bring you a little present that I sent him to you. Right, Fern?
Actually, I would rather fly.
Okay, then.
Although the drive is kind of interesting if you take the coast. It's like 300 miles. Actually, it's almost 400 miles from where I live.
So, all right.
Yes.
Okay, Milman Harris wrote, not sure, let's talk. Yes, let's talk, Milman.
Yes, let's talk. Yes, well, that's the whole point.
Oh, let's talk. Okay, we have a very special guest tonight, or today, this day, on the show, Tiernan Photography, another PWS member after last show, Heiko. Tiernan, welcome on the show.
Mr. T.
Mr. T, Uncle T. So we have a couple of very interesting topics, and we have to push the speed button today a bit, because T only has about one and a half hours, but that's good because the last conversations were very long. So we're gonna talk about photographic rules if there are photographic rules, and if they're really rules, and if there are any, is there any reason why we would want to or even should follow them? We're going to talk about gear. So what is it that we really need with photography? We're going to talk about, because, well, 3 curators, for those of you who do not know, my friend and fellow photographer Fernando, Dr. Fern, of course, also on the show, admin of luxlit.net, Tiernan, also member, PWS member, and yeah, some of you might know. Some of you might know that I happen to be on PWS as well. So we're also going to talk about the curating process, and that's a very fascinating topic that Tiernan brought up: the intersection of technique and craft, sensitivity to subject matter, the broader interest to the wider community. Very fascinating thing. And if we still have time, which I doubt, we're going to talk about the value of photo assignments. So yeah, what do you want to start with? Since we're curators, let's start with the curating process.
I just want to say, to be around you. You guys.
Am I hearing echo?
You getting an echo from me?
Yeah.
I don't hear.
The advantage of using a mic.
Now it's okay.
Okay. Someone on the chat, do you hear an echo? Heiko says yes. You just wrote yes.
Is it Mr. T creating the echo? Can you guys hear me?
Heiko wrote there's an echo with T. So maybe if there's a possibility, can't understand T better. Can't understand T better now. Maybe maybe says not now.
Headset. You think a headset would do better?
Yeah, that would be great.
Let me try something. Okay, why don't you guys talk, and I will adjust my sound system.
All right, then we will talk. Will we start with the curating process, Fern? Your specialty.
Wow. Well, honestly, for me, what I look for is, and we've talked about this, and again, it's something that I think we'll go back to every once in a while. The photo has to grab me some way. It has to make me stop and look. I do tend to, I don't know if you've ever actually watched people looking at pictures, or when people go to museums, for example, but really most people just zoom through. And most people look at your pictures, and me, not so much. I mean, by I don't want to say nature, but there's a part of me, for whatever reason, that there's something about me that I tend to look at pictures, even if it's just snapshots of a picnic or something, more closely. Not necessarily for artistic purposes, but just for the interest of what's in them, and so on. Most people don't do that, so I think there's that. I think there's something within me that's a part of it. Plus, as I've said several times, my talent is one of my talents is actually critiquing and analyzing. I think I'm really good at that. So I think there's that part of it for me, the fact that I love doing it, and that I like understanding and learning about how to do it. And then I just look at a picture and it has to grab me. I mean, there's some, we get a lot of nice photographs, but then what is it about this picture that that binds in with some of the other stuff that we have, that fits? For example, we have the, no violence, no products, no nationalist symbols. There's certain guidelines that we have, but there's also sometimes, even if it's like a bad photograph, and it's funny because there's 2 photographs that to this day I am really sorry I didn't reblog when I was with Lens Blur, and I should have fought for one of them. One of them was a goofy picture of this kid in a made-up superhero, swimming goggles and a towel, and just these ears sticking out, and it was just an adorable photograph with really popping colors. I thought it was just a sweet, pretty, goofy photograph. And still to this day, that's what I will sometimes reblog. I just had someone that I reblogged a photograph, I'm not going to say which one, that was just weird, but there was something about it that was just that attract, and the person messaged me and said, not even LuxLit can make people like this, you know, and then the image, and I'm like, but that's a part of the fun, and that's a part of what we do. I mean, sometimes people just won't understand what we're seeing, but that's fine.
Can I interject
And
something?
that's part of the adventure.
That is indeed. Can you guys hear me now? I got the new mic.
Yes.
Is this better?
Perfect.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. We're not getting the echo? All right. What I wanted to say was, I thought what you said about this person that really, you know, something unique about, remember what I said, it's about sensitivity to subject. Sometimes the subject just jumps out at you, the person, the scene. There's just something about it that you overlook, you know, the problems, you know, strictly speaking, the craft maybe not that great, you know, it isn't that sharp, or it isn't, you know, doesn't follow rules or whatever, but, you know, it's that subject matter that makes you want to go, wow, this shot deserves to be seen. So I thought you gave a great example of that.
Yeah, and it's actually an emotional, I guess, for lack of a better word, an emotional connection. And sometimes, I mean, let's be real. You know, what if we're going to go look at what's really popular out there? Landscapes, gorgeous landscapes. You know, are number one. Beautiful portraits of pretty young people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those are also really popular. Let's be real. You know, those are the ones that get the highest numbers. Stuff that is recognizable, some of the cityscapes and so on, that's very recognizable, beautifully done. I mean, I'm not knocking them. I mean, that's a talent. And Pete and I've told Pete 1,000 times, I think he's a brilliant photographer. There's a whole bunch of people who do landscapes and these kinds of that are absolutely stunning. But again, there's what you said, that Tiernan, that's all this other stuff that may not be perfect, but there's something visceral. There's an emotional connection, and so that's not always. I mean, sometimes it is the technical. I mean, we have, speaking of landscape, we have a couple of people who submit landscapes on a regular basis that are absolutely stunning and perfect, and just I could fall in. Without being too spectacular necessarily, as far as, like, you know, I don't know how to put it, but yet they're gorgeous.
Right. I call that the wow factor.
Yes, they still have a wow factor.
How
Yes.
much wow factor a shot has. And, you know, I like that stuff, but sometimes, of course, I like a challenge of making a shot work well without the wow factor, you know? It's like,
yes.
you go both ways.
Yes. Well, and the other thing is that I will say about the curating that I do look at, because I'm very mindful of, one of the things that I think about is, okay, you know, sometimes art is supposed to shake you up, and it's supposed to make you think, and supposed to hit you and make you think about stuff that you may not be able to deal with very well, blah blah blah. But the bottom line is, if I show you something that might be disturbing, I'm not going to be around to help you pick up the pieces. And if I'm going to show you something that might be political, I might anger you in a way that, you know, I'm not going to be there to discuss it with you. So I'm very mindful of, yes, being a little thought-provoking, but of also certain parameters that you know what I mean, that don't push people in a way that I won't be able to deal with and help them. So I read, because sometimes you'll see a beautiful photograph and it'll be saying stuff like, I'm going to kick this person's ass and do this, and it's like, no, gorgeous picture, but it's not going up here. Or and again, Pete and I had a heated discussion about this a while back. Even some Tumblr's names, I will not reblog stuff from certain, certain tumblers that have names that are. Hmm?
I think I know who you speak of. So
No, there's several. There's several, and there's one that's a borderline, because it's really about violence and disrespect, and it's like, no, and even
towards women, I feel.
Yes,
towards women, it just really makes it crazy. And I remember we had a big debate once when I was in Lynchburg about certain whether or not they cross the line, and I kind of feel if they do, it's like just not worth it.
Yes, and yes, I remember that debate. Yeah, I was thinking about that. Yeah, you were there. But so I because even the we did this about I did this about 4 or 5 months ago, and it was because of Heiko actually, and his post about being more political and being more aware that, and I asked all of our LuxLit members, I said, there's all these political pictures out there within certain limitations, not anything that's anger, not anything, but when there's photos that are political, do we want to reblog them? And it has to be unanimous. And God bless them, they all said yes. So those are the things that I will look at pictures, and I'm very careful of sets for 2 reasons. Photo sets, and this is for all y'all who post photo sets, it's very rare the people who can post photo sets where every picture is worth it.
Right.
You will have photo sets that have 5 photographs and there's one that just sucks, the big one.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And I will reblog it. You know what I mean?
And I discourage photo sets. I really don't like them. I mean, to my mind, every shot, if it's a good one, deserves its own attention. And to have multiple shots just takes away from the really good one. I think have we hit a button here with Steve?
I disagree. I respectfully disagree. I think that we had this, I don't know if you saw that. I think Angie reblogged that to Let's Talk Photography yesterday. This is amazing post about photo books. I will put that in the show notes later on the blog. It's a great post about how to repetition in photo books, about double size in photo books. I really don't say and I see that with my own photos. There's sometimes photos that I really like, but they just simply don't work by themselves, and that's when I rarely post photo sets, but that's when I try to find a photo that I can put next to that or above that, below that, so that the photo set itself, and I think that is what you were referring to, Fern, as well. If a photo set has to work as a set as well, and you can't just take 5 nice pictures, great pictures, amazing pictures, and put them together, the end result might suck. So the photos have to fit.
They have to work.
I think that you can make photos that probably won't work for themselves in photo sets actually work, and some photos, and that's my personal opinion, are not really worth to be posted individually. But if you can make something out of that with the help of other photos by making a set, something can really start to get a new dimension.
Yeah. And I have to say my objection, because I mean I've seen photo sets, and I do agree with you about that post. There's photo sets that, because look, and we're going to go into maybe head into another topic, but it's the whole idea of, I have a photo sets. I have 5 pictures I took over a period of 5 years, and they're not anything, but I think these are like the end of the year 5 best shot things that what's the reblogs?
Gray card.
Great card, thank you, that they do. Those pictures don't necessarily go together, but we usually write something, and so if there's a sense, but what gets to me is a photo, and I'm not a big fan of photo sets, I also have to say, especially some of the larger ones. I mean, if you're going to do a photo set, usually I would say 3, maybe 4 tops. But the problem is the culling and getting the very best shots and making absolutely sure that every one of those shots in that set are good. And that is very rare. That
Right.
is,
And they work together.
yeah. However, the whole post makes sense, because I would include the text and the title in how they work, in making them work. But if let's say if there's 5 images, if one of the 5 images isn't good, I'm not going to reblog that photo set. I'm not. And I mean by good, not just technically, but again, even the emotional impact. If one of them just is, it's okay, ain't gonna cut it. It's just that simple.
I think I like photo sets of people more. I mean, landscapes can work well too, but I mean, something about people, capturing them in their different moments and their different feelings together, can create a more rounded sense of that, of the people you're capturing. I'm more open to that, I think.
There's
Yes.
something I read or saw lately, and I will try to find that. I think it was a video that I saw lately about photography. I will try to find that video and also put that in the show notes later. And there was the question: what is a good photograph? What makes a good photograph? Or what is and this was a very short video, and the essence of that, well, it was not really just the essence. It was, this video was about, in the end, it all comes down to the purpose of a shot. Why did I make that photo? And did I make that photo in a way that everything that comes together, all the gear, the skills, everything, the idea, how to frame a shot, if that serves the purpose of the shot. And so you can even, and there we are at sets again. Sometimes we were talking, Fern and I, you saw that also, T, in the beginning, briefly. We were talking about the wedding shooting I had last Friday. And there are photos that I made specifically for set in a photo book. The photo itself, yeah, it is a nice shot, but it's a sequence, and there was the sequence of that guy tying his, or putting on his tie. Every single of these photos is, yeah, might be nice or not, but putting them together, especially then with, see, I sadly can't show them live on YouTube, but seeing that that he had his smartphone in front of him, where there was the instruction how to make a how do you say in English, a knot, tie knot. I don't know how to put on a tie. So I think, if we figure out what the purpose of the shot is, and be it just a shot of a flower, and we say, why do I want to take a photo of that flower? What drives me to take a shot of that flower, other than this is just a flower, this is a flower? But is it the colors? Is it the textures? Is it how the light shines on the petals, or whatever? So trying to find that, and trying to get that out, carve that out by choosing everything we have consciously, or even just because out of gut feeling.
Yeah, sometimes that gut feeling over time will change. Like when I first did landscape photography, when I first started back doing it, I mean, I've done it much of my life, but I started doing it again on Tumblr and exploring with digital, then digital editing. I thought the goal was to bring out every highlight, every line, and I had fun doing that. And I looked at the results, and they were pretty. But, over time, it's weird. It's like the point of it became less to bring everything out and more to sort of create a mood. And I found, actually, I got more and more over time, I kind of liked the way the camera had edited originally better than what I was doing with it. And that was a shock to me. And then sort of, I'm sort of known now for the more moody photographs. And I think I like that better emotionally. It kind of captures my feeling, how I look at it. So I don't see the trees anymore. You know, my trees are dark. You don't see the lines. I could bring them out, but actually it's the sky and the water and the way that fits together that captures a certain mood, and the colors are so much rich and vibrant colors. You know, I go for those things rather than the lines. And I had to learn over time what the point of it, what I wanted to get out of it and what I liked, and to trust my sense of that's what I wanted to do, and not like what other people necessarily gave me notes for or thought was wow or pretty.
Yeah. So I have to tell you, I just finished reading The War of Art, which is a very small, actually, it's about inspiration and creativity and motivation. And it wound up being a spiritual experience. And one of the core things that he says, which is what you, and I'm reading about creativity, and I read about creativity every once in a while, and it still goes back to exactly that, the enjoyment, what you want to do, how you want to do it, and when it feels right, when you're in that zone. And yeah, actually, I highly recommend the book. I have to say it's a really good read. About half the pages are just maybe 4 or 5 lines. It's one of those books where it's like the page, here's a paragraph, and you think, and but yeah, that's it, and it's the exploration. Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Cool. Excellent. Hopefully that won't be a rare thing. Do we have show notes? Do we post like links to stuff like some shows do when they talk about? Yeah. Well, I'd like to see that. So sounds good.
It's on. What I usually do is, as I said in the intro, there's Gia out there who writes most of the show notes, and she sends them to me, and I put them as well on YouTube, where they are clickable, so you can really jump to that specific point in time. And I also add the show notes in the post later, so I edit the post and I'll reblog the post with the show notes to Let's Talk Photography as soon as that happens. So if you have any kind of links of things that you were talking about, send them to me and they'll end up in the show notes.
Great.
Pete, was that video you were talking about, was that our friend Ted Forbes?
No, it wasn't Ted Forbes.
Okay, because he's touched on that subject. That's why I thought it was him.
No, I'm pretty sure it wasn't Ted Forbes. And it was actually a YouTube recommendation that I had. And if I remember correctly, and I wanted to write that down or bookmark it. Maybe I even bookmarked it. But I really, it was a very short video, but it wasn't Ted Forbes. Pretty sure that it wasn't Ted Forbes, but I'm gonna find it. So
now T, you brought something up that was, I think it was you, really interesting, about that you liked what the camera was doing more than your own edits, and that's started to take me towards our next topic of equipment.
Okay.
Yeah. What do we really mean? What do we really need? And it was actually it was a of course some of you might have seen it. I made a video about because I got a new lens a couple of weeks ago, and for whatever reason I made an unboxing video of that lens, which is just it's on my blog. And so I thought about what, and also the wedding that I mentioned before, large parts of that day, and I was there the whole day from the beginning. I accompanied the groom up until late at night, so it was really a long day. And I made most photos of that day with my new 24mm prime lens. And so there's something, because it's not the first wedding that I shot. There was for me really the question, what do I take with me to that wedding? Because wow, it's an event, right? You don't really know what will happen. You have to be prepared that something unexpected can happen. You have to be prepared about the lighting situation. So we had, of course, they wanted to have photos of all the guests together and singled out and just with the family, and we wanted to have them outside. But what if it's raining? Then we have to do it inside. So will I take a flash with me? And so there was really the question, what to bring with me to that wedding. And I ended up using mostly two lenses, which was my 3 lenses, sorry, my 24mm lens, my 50mm lens, and my Zoom 28-135, which I rarely used, but that was also something. You're kind of flexible, right? You can zoom in, you can zoom out, you get everything, but maybe not as beautifully or with that. When you shoot low light, you don't really get that light. You have to push up ISO really high to get the right brightness in the end. So there's the question: what do we really need? We see magazines all around everywhere. Like in every magazine, photo magazine, most magazines only consist of this is new, you need this, you need that. What about this? Test review here, test review there. On the web, every photography website will only show you the newest lenses, the newest cameras, the newest gadgets here and there. What do we really need? So what is it that you're shooting with, T?
Well, I agonized over this. I originally was going to get a DSLR, and I was torn between the names that have the most respect, Canon and Nikon, and I actually almost got a Nikon, and then I found out they weren't. Then a friend of mine told me about these mirrorless cameras, and I became fascinated with that idea because they're small, they're portable. That sounded really appealing. And then Canon was having a sale because apparently they screwed up their first attempt. Their software wasn't quite right, and so they were trying to jump back into the market. And so I got a really pretty cheap, good deal, like $300 some on a Canon ESOM, the mirrorless camera, and so I went with that. I kind of miss the viewfinder at times, but it is really light, and it's just a joy to carry around, and does almost everything really a DSLR could do, and so I've really enjoyed it. I do think sometimes of jumping over. It turns out they don't make this anymore, and it's become a lot of people who do a video work love it because it's so light and you can put all kinds of attachments on it and turn it into this incredible video thing. So I'm thinking of selling it at some point on eBay or something and jumping over to the DSLR. But if anyone wants to know more about it, I can try to explain. It took me forever to figure out how to work Canons, though. The instructions, I just had not really done a lot of work with cameras since I was a kid, and I used to work on my early analog camera, Honeywell Pentax, didn't even have a built-in light meter, which itself was an interesting education unto itself, and so it was such a big jump that now I'm sort of getting more savvy, but every once in a while it does things of its own accord because it's sensitive to touch. So so for a while I had everything running through a tungsten filter, and I can figure out how to turn that off. It's so complicated, but once you get the hang of it, it's a great little tool. Anybody want to buy
it? Do you find yourself going back to the user's manual every once in a while?
Once in a while, yeah, just to explore and try to figure out what else I can do. I do everything manually. I don't use any of the presets. For landscape, you can sit around and just mess with that forever. And I'm familiar with the basics, and so I just do everything myself and pretty much ignore most of the things they let you do.
What would you say that you're a landscape photographer mostly, or at least that is what you show in your blog.
Yeah.
What would you say is, other than your cameras, other than your camera body, what is the essential gear for you that you say that is really something I need as a landscape photographer?
Well, I need something that can go at low light conditions, and something that, you know, I can really sit and yet handheld. I sometimes drag a tripod around into the woods. I don't like to, but I can, you know. But something that's easy to work, that I can sit and just ease on, that isn't too sensitive to vibration, in a handheld way, that I can really make that shot to maximize the light. I love taking shots right around, not surprisingly, right around dusk. You know, my dad taught me, I think of sometimes the real photographer. I used to follow him around through the woods, and he kind of taught me how to see. And I think it's really, landscape is all about seeing through your camera, feeling the way the woods are going to look through the camera. And, you know, he was such a great photographer. I did more just pointing things out than I did actually shooting as a kid. I mean, I had my own camera, but he had the better one. So, you know, why not? So that's kind of what I want. It's a camera that I can use and get that great shot when I need it.
It's interesting that you mentioned the seeing. What was it you said? Seeing how it's going to look to the camera.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah,
you kind of know,
yeah,
see the world that way.
yeah. And because one of the things that I've always felt, even when I was my first two failed attempts at using SLRs, using film, that was that I learned to see like the camera sees.
Right.
And what's interesting now is that I'm shooting with the mirrorless, with the Fuji, the little 100 T 100S, which I like, but it's so very different from shooting with the Nikon with the zoom lens, which is more what I'm used to, because that's what I was using the D50 for 5 years. It's not just the feel, it's the actual looking and seeing and understanding how it sees. So I wanted to ask you both, actually, do you both just use one camera, or do you use two different cameras, or more than two? I mean,
I just use the iPhone. Otherwise, occasionally, usually if I don't have the other, you know. So, and someday I hope to move to DSLR. But
okay. Are you comfortable using? I mean, do you use the iPhone to take the kind of shots that you would take with your
the light is right, and the situation is right. I mean, I've thought sometimes as an amusing thing to ask people, can you spot the iPhone shot? You know, say I've done 5 shots and one of them will be an iPhone shot, and it'll have probably as many or more notes than the other ones. And, you know, if the right is light, again, you can't do the low light sunset, you know, right on the edge of dusk. You can't do that with an iPhone and really get the same quality. But, you know, in bright light, you know, and you're doing wide, basically the same kind of shots, you can do as good, if not better, with an iPhone.
But here's my question, because this is what I'm coming to grips with using the two cameras. Is there is there a feeling that you get using a specific piece of equipment that just feels right?
I'd have to have more. Maybe Pete can answer that one better than me.
I can't answer what your feeling with equipment is.
Well, I mean, what do you feel? What's your answer to that question? Because I don't feel like I've had, enough range of equipment to answer that one satisfactorily. I mean, I love my Canon, and I'm okay. I'm good with my iPhone. I know its limitations so I can do either, necessary.
Well, can you repeat the question, Fern?
Is there? I mean, because I agree with T. I haven't used. I mean, I'm in the same boat. I haven't used a whole lot of different equipment, but given the equipment that you've used, is there a camera of yours or a camera you've used that just feels right, that just physically feels right, that you have an emotional, for lack of a better term, an emotional connection with?
Yeah, my Canon, definitely. That's the thing is, because you mentioned that you shoot mirrorless. The only mirrorless I ever had in my hand was some sort of an Olympus mirrorless camera some years ago, and I really I didn't like it for two reasons. Reason number one, it was too small. I hate small cameras. And that might be there's even um, I think it's particularly harder to get a straight shot with a small camera than with a big camera, and it's particularly harder to get a shot that is not shaky with a small camera. And that is just physics. I mean, you see my big arms. I can actually. I wonder how I can drag my camera through the forest with my thin arms. But okay, so I'm still. I personally like bigger cameras much better, and so my DSLR is actually the camera that feels right for me, and that's also something. If I would buy a new camera, I would never do that online. I would go into the shop to have the camera in my hand, and even, and I have it here somewhere. I mean, this is my old. I don't know if you see that. This is my old 550D, which is really kind of. I had it for seven years. Still works. And well, it's actually no. I don't have it anymore, but I borrowed it for that evening. I gave it away, but I have it. No, I have it right here at the moment because I'm actually working on something. So, and I got the here it is. Oops, my 750D, and even though these two cameras are almost identical looking, I took that in my hand in the shop to feel it, because it has to. That's what I have my camera in my hands, so it has to. I have to feel it, and it just feels right for my hands. So that is the one thing that is the most important thing for me. The next thing is why I personally don't like mirrorless cameras is that I don't like electronic viewfinders. I know that people say you will get used to it over time, and I get I really understand it why people like that, because you see the picture in the viewfinder just as it will turn out in the end. And I was actually used to that being a video cameraman. So having my display, seeing everything like it as it will appear, and it took a long time until I really got used to or used again to an actual optical viewfinder that I can look through the lens and just not see the photo, how it will turn out from a brightness side, and even if I don't push that button for the depth of field, if it's how it will look like with the depth of field. So really having to rely on the on all the information that's in the display, and then later when I got more and more used to it, I didn't even need that. So I just knew by experience and gut feeling how to set my camera, and most of the time I was right. So that's the thing, and why I really and so I can't go back to an electronic viewfinder anymore, which is really weird. And every time I have to work with a camcorder again with a viewfinder, it just doesn't feel right anymore. But the great thing for me about DSLRs or any kind of camera system with interchangeable lenses is that with a new lens, you basically get a new camera. But that works the exact same way. So having this modular system is something that I really love with my DSLR. And I don't really have too much different gear. What I have is a collection of table tripods. And that's something, I don't know if you saw that. Well, of course, I mentioned it. This unboxing video that I made, I called it Pete's Box of Stuff, and I think I might make a couple more videos, not unboxing stuff, but showing actually stuff that I have in my. This is the actual box that I have, but it doesn't have a lid, so I took the other box for the video. And so for me, it's not about having different cameras, but having one camera with different lenses and a couple of different types of gear. And what type of gear do we need? And I think that is very, very dependent on what kind of photos we take. I'm also a landscape photographer mostly, so what do I need? It's just like what you said, T. I need something that I will be able to even shoot in low light. So fast lens, wide angle lens for landscape shots often. So that was the main reason for getting my new 24 millimeter. It's not really a wide angle on my crop, but whatever. So wide angle with
I lust after wide angle lenses. But, you know, the conundrum I face is, you know, in order to add lenses, I have to buy an adapter, and then I have to really commit to my camera. And that's one of the things that's holding me up, because I don't have a lot of money or resources. And so I'm going, well, do I jump to DSLR, you know, and then invest in lenses? Or do I invest in more lenses now and lock myself into the mirrorless? And as a result, I don't have any other lenses yet. So I don't know what to do about that dilemma. I'm half tempted to crowdfund to get more equipment, but who's going to pay me money, you know, for just because I make pretty pictures is kind of how I feel about it. Who's going to give me
never
money?
Know. You never know.
I thought about it.
That's also something I really think that's an important thing. If you have or an important thing to have in mind, if you have a modular system like a mirrorless camera with interchangeable lenses, or like a DSLR, that once you decided to have to go with one type of, let's say with one brand, you better stick to it, simply because you can use a lot of the equipment with later cameras. There's one exception, maybe with lenses, depending on which camera brand you have, you can't use every lens on every camera. Well, maybe there are adapters, some will work, others will not work that much, but with a lot of other equipment. So that's really something to have in mind. So I know that because I love my Canon, not because I'm a Canon fanboy, but simply because I love working with that camera. And I never really worked with any other brand. So I had other cameras in my hand, but I never really worked with that. I know in the end, it doesn't really matter whether you have a Sony, an Olympus, an Pentax, whatever, Canon, Nikon, all make pretty pictures if you know what you do. So the details are just for people who really know what they need and specifically look for something. Like if you're a sports photographer, you will want to look for a camera that has a faster burst mode, so can shoot photos faster, how do you say, after each other, and
Burst.
more in burst mode, right? Yeah, you want to have a faster lens, etc. So what I use as a landscape photographer is, well, I want, even if I have a wide angle lens, okay, but it's not very maybe it is fast, so I get the aperture wide open, but then I have a shallow depth of field. So I want to have a deep depth of field. How can I get a deep depth of field? Closing the iris. So, but it's dark, so I don't want to push up the ISO too much. So what do I need? Stability. So I need a tripod. So this is basically all the equipment that I need as a landscape. I personally need as a landscape photographer is sometimes my tripod, and then, well, also something that maybe some on-lens filters, like a polarizing filter. That's what I use a lot, and an ND filter.
Bags you carry around Amazon.
Pardon?
You ever get those little bags you carry around in the woods to put your cameras on? And there's all kinds of creative things you can get from the cameras on that are lighter and easier to carry than tripods.
Definitely, but so I have this one thing, and that's what I was thinking about for a long time, whether I want to have something like that. And there's always the saying, if you buy cheap, then you buy twice. Is that the saying? And I don't really believe that. Not in terms of, if you know that you need something, if you really know that you need something, then it's probably true. If you buy cheap, then you buy twice. But if you don't really know if you need it or not, I very often just buy really cheap stuff. Like there's this Gorilla Pot type thingy that I got for $10. I didn't know if I really need it. So what you can do with that is just to bend and twist the limb.
Right. They're a little vibrating, but
wrap it around a tree, for example. And I realized, hey, okay, that's useful. And so when this thing breaks one day, it was just $10 and I buy a better one. So
do you use it?
I use it, yeah.
Okay.
And I rather use my as I said, I have a collection of table tripods. I always have a table tripod with me. I almost never really have my big tripod with me because
table tripod. I'm not sure what that is.
Table tripod.
I mean, I can imagine just a smaller tripod.
This is no, I don't have it here. I have like 5-6 different size table tripods, and one is really a metal one that I have in my camera bag. And that I use actually very often, because you can put these small tripods, you can often put them somewhere up, and you don't really need a big tripod all of the time. So table tripod, I have it with me all of the time, and the big tripod only when I really think that I need it. So, and then, yeah, polarizing filter, I think, is one of these things that you might want to have if you're a landscape photographer.
Yeah, my dad was a big fan of those polarizing filters. I suppose I should try them again.
Milman Harris wrote in the chat, aside from the practical needs of specific types of photography, I try to work from the idea that gear is good, but vision is better, which is the tagline of David Duchemin. And Amy agreed. Yeah, absolutely. There's something, if I want to have a certain picture, then I have to try to find out how I can get it. And very often you don't really need special gear. Like if you want to have really, like Milman Harris wrote, I follow his YouTube videos. When I start lusting after new gear, I remind myself to try to do better with what I already have. Exactly, that was what I tried to say. Some things are not possible, but very few things are not possible with just no gear, with no gear. So
you remind me, and not everyone may know what a polarizing filter does. I'm trying to remember. It's been a long time.
Polarizing filter. It's it filters out light from certain directions. So which sounds very how do you say? Basically, what it does, it reduces reflections. So you can
cut those lens flares out, right?
Not really lens flares, but you can filter out metallic reflections, or not metallic reflections, everything but metallic reflections. I forgot. What it does, it basically intensifies the colors by filtering out stray light. So you can turn it around. You can make the sky look more punchy blue, really darker, and like water reflections. You can really just dial them out. Shoot.
Man, that's my middle name sometimes, I think, reflections.
So there's something about the equipment.
Sorry,
go ahead.
There's a lot going on in the chat. Heiko Mulfat wrote, you might not need special gear, but it definitely helps to get the best out of a certain picture of you. Christian Augustine, CA Berlin, writes, polarizer, make the sky bluer and water transparent. Exactly. Milman Harrison writes, I took a picture of a garden hose yesterday. At first, I hated it, but once I developed it, my vision of that ordinary item emerged. I didn't even see it at first. Amy asks, T, you might be thinking ND filters. No, ND filters are just just making pictures darker, like sunglasses for a lens. That's an ND filter. Christian Augustine writes, does work with glass like water, but not with metal. So only if the light is polarized too, right? So polarizing filters will filter out reflections other than metallic reflections. So yes,
So, so I wanted to go back to the equipment thing and actually the Heiko's comment. I think one of the interesting things one of the things that I've always been interested in is, okay, this is the equipment that I have. For example, my D50. I mean, I got it already used. By the time I got rid of it earlier this year, it was already 10 years old. But I still tried to get what I could with that piece of equipment, and those limitations helped spur my creativity, if that makes sense. So I think, yes, you know, if you have the equipment, that's lovely. And I was thinking, sorry about this, but I was thinking about filmmakers like Alfred Hitchcock, who sometimes made deeply disturbing films during an era of great restrictions and censorship, and yet he could convey certain topics that were taboo without ever mentioning them, and being creative in how he did it. And he also did that visually in his films. And I think the same thing applies with any kind of thing that we do. I think the limitations can spur our creativity. You know, I've got a piece of paper and a pen. How am I going to write something or draw? You know what I mean? So yes, the equipment is wonderful, but I think once we start focusing on the equipment, at least for me, we can start losing sight of the creativity. And I think the argument, although about using a fixed lens instead of a telephoto, because you walk around and you try to find, and it inspires you to see things and to place yourself differently. Whereas with a telephoto, it's just easy to zoom in and out and go, okay, I've got the shot. I think there is something to that. I think.
Can I just, I really, that something we talked about before the show, actually, but Millman wrote something very, very fascinating. He wrote, from my experience with web design and development, the question is, what do I want to do? And then I think about what gear will help me get there. And
Yes.
I think that exactly is what this is about. If you're a portrait photographer, and that I mentioned that because I made a making of a portrait shooting. So I did video, I was documenting the whole thing, made 2 videos about portrait shooting that was going on lately, and I was able to really see another portrait photographer work, and he was a person who worked just with available light. So there's something you read all of the time, like, yeah, portrait photography, you need this flash, you need this system. Bullshit. It's not. If you're a portrait photographer, if you want to be or if you want to use artificial light, if you're a portrait photographer who just exclusively works with ambient light, well, no need for that. So it's really about what kind of photos do I want to have. If I'm an event photographer, yes, I might need a flash, right? If you're and then maybe questioning something to soften the flashlight. That's one thing.
Add something to that when you're talking about portrait photography. You know, obsession with camera equipment might distract you from the most important element to portrait photography, which is your relationship to your subject, how you see them. There's an interaction going on there. And that's ultimately, so in natural light, in a natural setting, you know, you can bring out characteristics that are really hard in a more artificial pose, kind of, let's get all the light right, and by then the person's sitting there and uncomfortable, and you're not sensitive to that. Just let me throw in one of the insights that I learned taking photos of my own daughter, which is I can tell my photos of her when I see other people taking pictures of her. It doesn't even look like her to me. I mean, it's that different. That taught me something about portrait shooting that I might not be as sensitive to. That there's an interactive quality. I mean, we say in physics now, the perception of the atom changes the nature of what the atom is doing. There's things we're learning, and that's kind of a different level of that we have to be aware of as photographers. Anyway.
Absolutely. And that's I really believe that I mean, there's a gear hype everywhere, magazines, web, because people want to sell stuff. And sometimes, and I found that because I got a very one of these action cam thingies, got it for very, very cheap, and it's fun to play with that thing now. I didn't need it. I got it really for like a couple of bucks, and I'm absolutely happy with that. And then now I find out new ways how to use this, how to implement this in my work, whatever. But in the end, it's all about what do I want to do, and then here another wonderful message on the chat by Matt O'Dwyer. That is exactly how I go about buying lens, carefully researching and then choosing what I believe will work best to get the shots I want. So really getting out there and just buying because it's good will not get you anywhere. But it's really about trying to figure out what do I want as a result, and then trying to find out how will I be able to get that, and then getting that special certain gear that will help me to achieve my goal, either make it possible or make it easier for me to do that. And I think that is one of the big problems that most of us, me included, in many cases, simply don't know what we really want, to achieve. Because then, if we really know, I want that, you can make, let's go back to portrait photography, and I can really compare that. I did a couple of wedding shootings, and of course, the first 2 weddings I shot, I had a bag with all my lenses with me, with all my flash. I have 2 external flashes, had them with me, and all the diffusers. And in one instance, I even had my light stands with me, and umbrella and stuff like that. So, did I use all of that stuff? Yes, I did, because I had it with me.
Right.
And I was so busy with all that
pose.
And on the last wedding, it was last Friday, not yesterday, Friday before yesterday, I just had my camera and my 3 lenses that I knew that I would use. And the photos that I got out of that are just, at least as I see it, for my personal development in photography, are some of the best photos I ever made. And that is because I actually focused on the shots. I knew that I have this lens with me, this lens with me, this lens can do this lens can do that. And then I sat there, most of the time just sat there, watched what will happen, or guessed what will happen. And then half the day I just shot with that 124mm prime lens. And yeah, Fern saw the photos and he agreed that they really gave the mood that I wanted to show. And we have a lot of things going on.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a lot.
Sorry, Heiko wrote, exactly, Millman. I liked my picture already without the DSLR, but the quality with the DSLR is just enhanced. Oh, that was referring of, getting a DSLR. Millman writes, Pete, your socks photo is wonderful. Thank you, Millman. It could have been done with an expensive lens or an iPhone, but the story and the emotional appeal of the story didn't come from the gear. It came from you. Thank you very much. It was actually shot with that lens. And it was on my brother's wedding. It aren't his socks. and we had we were just walking around town on the late afternoon, and I saw that, and I had to take a photo of that. Heiko writes, only thing missing now is another lens. Yes, we figured that out, Heiko, when we met in January. I'm sure that pictures with my iPhone are not bad either, but I feel way more comfortable with my DSLR. Why is it? Do you feel the same? Shooting with a DSLR makes you feel more comfortable than shooting with an iPhone?
I have to. So for me, if I, why am I getting? I'm hearing the echo. For me, I love the little Fuji 100, the fixed lens, but I have to say I feel there's something about the feel of using the DSLR, of using the zoom lens and of knowing that I can have the zoom, and just the feel that like you were saying, Pete, and I actually went out and I did buy it online, but I did go and handle a D55 in one of 500 in one of the stores to see how it felt, and it's still, I mean, I will say the D50 felt a little heavier, but it felt nicer in my hand. But the D5500 felt right in my hand. There's something about the F100, it just doesn't satisfy me as much physically, the use of it, as my D5500. I have to say, I don't mind taking pictures with both, but I yeah. So yeah, but and I want to go back to get into the discussion. There's one thing. Yes, I agree with Millman. I think when you reach a certain plateau and you're comfortable with the kind of work that you do, and you have an idea of what kind of photographer or creator of any kind you are, it's easy to say, this is what I want to do. What do I need? But I have to say this, when I bought my D50, I didn't research. It was a friend of mine, a coworker, who said, "I've got this old camera. I've just bought a new one. Do you want it? $200." And I'm like, "Yes." And it turned out to be, maybe I love it. I mean, I've used a few other cameras just briefly, but I loved my D50, and I still kind of miss it. I have to say. But it just happened, and with those limitations of that camera, I learned how to do and get what I wanted and find what I wanted, and make the compromise sometimes, you know what I mean? And it helped. Yeah, it helped me get a vision of whatever it is my vision is. So the whole equipment thing, it's personal. It winds up being just as personal as everything else and anything that's creative. It's always about how you navigate all of this. You know what I mean? No judgment. I wouldn't judge. And you know what I mean? The more I see how I work with this stuff, the more I realize it is very personal. Anyway.
Yeah,
oh, Steph joined us.
A lot going in the chat. I want to read. Where did we stop? Melman Harris wrote, sometimes you only have an iPhone or whatever we have. I see, get the shot with whatever you have, lol. Yep. Definitely. And here's something I really want to share that. During my time in film school, of course, we learn how to operate a video camera, those big shoulder cameras, right? TV. Back then, it was still it was even digital beta. We still had an analog beta cams on our shoulders, and we learned how to do that, operate them manually. They had viewfinders, of course, black and white, so no color viewfinders, which is not because they were so old. It's just you see sharpness better, you see contrast better, so you really had to remember to set the white balance correctly before the shot. So everything like that, we had to do that. And with my camcorder that I have, even can also switch the viewfinder to black and white. So we learned all of that. And of course we were taught, and sadly we won't have the time, I guess, to talk about rules, but one of the big rules was to always shoot full manual. That's what you do. You shoot full manual. That is the big rule that you had to do. So we had our exams and everything, and I was one of my first jobs was it was 8 hours somewhere on a plateau in blazing sunlight shooting tennis matches. Very creative. So, problem was sun 8 hours, really light changes all over the place, all of the time, clouds. So having to get the shots consistently, they had to look the same. The ones in the morning, of course, the shadows were a bit differently, and had to look the same as the ones in the afternoon. How to do that? If you do that manually with the clouds rushing by, fumbling on the settings. I talked with my professor back then, and he said, "Well, just switch your camera to auto gain." Gain is the same thing as on digital cameras, ISO, right? And I said, "You told me to shoot manual." And I said, "Okay, listen, the professional will do everything to get the shot, and no matter what, that's what makes them professional. They don't fucking care." He didn't say fucking because we're German. They don't fucking care whether you follow any rules or anything. You just get the fucking shot, no matter
Getting back to the rules. I love it.
yeah. So
You talk about rules?
no matter how you do it, and it's not whether you shoot it's not whether you shoot manual or automatic. What makes you professional? What makes you professional is that you can deliver. So if you have an assignment and you can deliver, then you can be a professional, no matter how you got the shot. We shot, and that's what we did. Like, no matter if we have to take a shot with we shot with we shot scenes for movies with smartphones, with little digital camcorders. So it just, we have to make the shot the way it is supposed to look, no matter how you do that. That's what
So
makes
Heiko says language.
I don't fucking care. See,
And
I
let's
was
note, it wasn't me
in
who
this,
cussed. It was
there's
me.
a wall on the left here, right? There's a wall, and behind that wall is my living room,
He's not
and there's
cursing
Heiko
German. Yeah.
sitting in January after like 7, 15, 19, 25 beer, or as he calls it, beer. It was actually Kölsch. So don't tell me about language, Heiko. Okay?
All right. So anyway, rules. Let's talk about rules. Are there rules? Are there rules in photography? Are there rules about what makes a good photograph? Because we started and we.
Should we go through the messages in the chat? Just asking.
Well, that's pretty much language, and then you learn the technology. Applause to Pete. I guess applause to Pete from Christian Aguilar because he cussed. Look, if you're going to start applauding for cussing, you better hold on, because as good as he is, and Mildman will verify, and so will Pete, I'm better.
Probably, but I have the better.
And in a couple of languages, so yes.
But I can do German swear words.
Yeah, but it's not the same.
Swear word. I only know one.
You taught me. You taught me when the first time we talked, like, I don't know, 2 years ago or something, when I accidentally said the F word, and I said, "Don't hold yourself back. We invented it back then." That's what you taught me, right? So you have the inventor of the F word.
Germans also invented hippies, but that's another subject.
Oh, hippies. Okay, let's move on. Let's not get started on hippies.
Let's go to the rules here, folks.
Okay, so let's go to the rules. Are there rules? Because here's why I'm asking, are there rules? And why I think it's really, we started talking about the curation. And I mentioned, and we all pretty much agreed, that there's just something about a photograph that clicks, that makes us look. So first of all, are there rules? Yes or no? Are there rules?
Yes and no.
Okay.
All right. So here's my sense of it. Okay. I think that photographers over time have learned which practices will result in people looking at shots. We're looking at wow shots and say, wow. I mean, there's some underlying psychological processes which just occur. They're natural, you know, and if you want to achieve certain effects, you have to be sensitive or learn those rules, if you want to call them rules. Okay, and so once you know them, you know, you're more likely to achieve them. So yes, you need to know them if that's what you want to do. And I would take that a step further and say that sometimes you need to know what they are when you want to deliberately break them and go in other directions that also work. And so like a lot of things, it's good to know the rules. I mean, my other passion is writing, and I'm trying to follow with a Casablanca model with a story that I'm doing now, which follows a certain formula, okay? And I want to see if I can achieve that so I can better know how to turn around and write a story that does something different. And it's the same with photography in a way. So that's my short form.
I totally agree with you about the, but here's the thing. I think one of the interesting things when you look at the history of photography, there's a couple of things. The early photographers experimented, but by the same token, what a lot of them were doing was trying to reproduce the kind of visual art and the visual styles and rules of painting and drawing. And create images with photography that emulated that. Specifically, there was the movement, there was the very staged portrait movement that was very classical. A lot of times there were images that were very inspired by Greek and Roman art and so on, and they were very staged and posed, in part because, of course, it took like 20 minutes to expose the gelatin whatever film thing that they used to use. But even when you look at someone like one of the father of street photography, Cartier-Bresson, what I find fascinating that gets overlooked so often is this guy didn't just pick up the camera and start taking fabulous pictures. He's the one who said 10,000 shots are your first shots. They're going to be horrible. You learn. There's the learning process. But there's the other thing about him, that this man was trained in painting. This man was a trained artist who went from one visual medium to another visual medium. He brought with him what he already knew, and he applied that. So that there are rules, yes, and I agree with T completely. You have to know them to break them, because that's the creativity thing. It's like, oh well, and with the writing, let's not talk about the writing. And Millman can speak to this because he read my dissertation, and I went to town getting creative on that thing, and breaking all kinds of rules. But that's that, and it goes back to the limitations of equipment and everything. When you have a vision and you know that these are the limitations, whether it's guidelines or equipment or whatever, and you still navigate and try and achieve whatever it is that your vision is, that's what makes that final product satisfying. And as someone who is, looking at through photographs to pick ones that I think are worth sharing, because to me this all ties in, that's what makes me stop and go, okay, this picture is getting reblogged on LuxLit because I can see this, I can see that, and I can sometimes see what someone was trying. And so guidelines and everything, yes. Because here's the other thing, there have to be guidelines, even if we have to create new ones, because art, whether it's visual or whether it's written or singing, it's about communicating with a specific language. Even if we create a new language and we start agreeing, it's a community thing. It's about understanding what each of us are trying to say and sharing that.
if I can interject on there, I think, no, that's great. I just want to build on that. I think you're talking about the next layer of rules. I mean, there's psychological processes which are true for all people and transcend all cultures. And then there's another layer of conventions. In other words, and this probably depends on what kind of photography you're doing. I'd say maybe less so with landscapes, certainly with portraits, street shots, and anything with the with human artifice involved. You're going to have conventions to show stuff, and you got to know those conventions. You're part of the discussion. You're communicating and part of a community, and you're bringing these things in. And you got to know them. And you got to know what people expect if you want to reach those people and not just take pictures for yourself. I mean,
Yes.
that's what you want to do. And it sort of reminds me a little, we're talking about Hitchcock. I'm in the middle of Hitchcock and Truffaut, which I can't emphasize enough how fun that movie. I didn't now I want to read the book that it's based upon.
Yes.
But it's just fascinating to me how, you know, Hitchcock had to go through doing the what do you call them, the not talkies, the opposite of that. You know, the
Silent films.
Yeah, silent films. And almost like you had to come up with a language of how to express things, know the visual language to say things in a way. It's like everyone should do that before they then graduate to doing the talkies. And yeah, I mean, it's sort of like everyone should do the light, like for me, the light meterless camera that forces you to think about what it does and pay for every shot. There was a lesson to be learned in that nobody gets anymore, you know? I don't know. It's fascinating.
Yeah. Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin had sort of a competition, little known fact, and who needs less of these, I don't know how they're called, these written things where they
what did they call those things, the talk in between, there is a word for that.
Yeah, like these
the title cards.
Title cards. Thank you. So who has less title cards in their movies?
That's a good one.
And it's good practice, telling something with pictures.
Yeah.
What I think I had, it was a couple of years ago that I had a huge discussion with a young photography student about, and it started like that. She was like, I don't know, 17, 18 something, and she messaged me on my blog telling me, Pete, what I don't get, your photos, you're doing everything wrong, but they still work. And I said, what am I doing wrong? And then she told me, like, yeah, I'm a photography student, and she told me all of that stuff that her teacher told her. And I said, so what's the problem? Yeah, my problem is that your photos still work.
They shouldn't, but they do.
And there's I mean, of course, I know all of these rules. I had to learn them all as well, but I don't. It's what you said, guys. They are there because it's not that there's like that there were like 5, 3, 7, 19 people sitting around a table discussing. We have to find some rules that we can judge photos by, and so we're gonna set up the 19 commands of photography, and everyone who doesn't follow them doesn't have the right to call themselves a photographer. These are things that people found out over time work. And if you look at photos that work, no matter if a person knows the rules or not, you will find some of these rules in them, simply because that's how we perceive our world. We will automatically, and that's one of these fascinating things that I realized when I started to learn more about rules, that when we look, the way we perceive the world, we automatically frame whatever we see. We just blend out stuff that doesn't belong in our picture. So when I look here right into the camera, I don't see what's going on there, even though it is there. I just don't realize it. And so my I automatically make a composition. And that was for me a fascinating thing to realize when I got more into picture making of any kind with a camera, that I try to recreate that with the framing of my shot, for example. And then many of the photos that I made, that before I really consciously started to do that, and I look at a photo and say, well, that photo is kind of gripping, that works for me. And if you analyze that, you see, oh, okay, there's this and that kind of composition in there. And some photos don't have any kind of visible composition or don't follow any visible rules. They still work for me, might not work for anyone else. So for me, rules are more like, as you said it, T, they're guidelines,
Right.
for something. And
Be aware of. You
I
should
want
know.
to improve on my photography, and I see a photo, I look at the photo and I say, why the fuck doesn't it work? And then trying to figure out, okay, what could I implement in that shot? How could I frame it differently? How could I, is there a way, can I find patterns in that, or leading lines or whatever? And that's, if you know these type of things and work consciously with these type of things, they at some place wander in your subconsciousness, and you start to realize these things, and automatically frame your shots right, meaning in a way that is pleasing to you and maybe even pleasing to others. And you suddenly see, like here, I look there and I see that glass skull on my desk, which is standing there, and the light shines through, and I suddenly see, okay, there are shapes in there, and I start to not see subjects anymore, but I see shapes, I see lines, I see how, and I think that is the big step that we have to make, or can make. We don't have to. It's not a rule, right? If we stop seeing subjects, but rather shapes, colors.
That's kind of what I meant by seeing the way the camera sees.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And by the way, and this is something, and yes, by the way, Millman brought up Howard Becker. What was it? Art Worlds. Highly recommend that book. And I also mentioned John Berger, who was the media, especially visual media critic, who passed away recently. There's lots of his stuff on YouTube. Highly recommend that to start thinking about this, because to me, and I've said this before, understanding the way we communicate and how images communicate and what they communicate, and culturally the different places we put stuff is fascinating. But what was I going to say? Oh, shoot. I was going to say, what were you just saying, Pete?
Or yeah, which is on the chat.
Yeah, I've been paying attention to chat too.
You guys are, if you want to hold that thought and come back to it. I had something I wanted to say on something.
Sure.
Of course.
There's something about, we're talking about film. One of the things that I love when I'm curating shots, I look for, I don't always achieve it, because I don't think landscape lends itself to this, but I love pictures that tell stories. And that's something that's sort of hard to come up with any set of rules that's going to lead you in that direction. I mean, being aware and seeing the story in the picture, that's, I don't know, how do you just get the feeling for it, I guess. And I love curating in part to look for those kinds of pictures. That's what really I'm in awe of.
Absolutely.
Well, and
sorry.
Go ahead.
Can I say something about rules? It's for me, it's, we are artists, right? So we don't want to follow any rules. We want to be rebels. We want to break rules.
And speak for yourself. Back out there. No.
Let me finish. I think that is also something, and that is what I see a lot, is this this notion you have to know the rules to break them. That there seem to be more people out there who say, I want to break the rules. And I don't see the value in that. wanting to break rules in art? Because the way I see it is that I use these things to make what I want. And so why would I want to break that? When I see that works for my shot, or that works better that way, then I use it. For me, it's a bit like if you have a house. Like, what is a house? It is walls, and it's a door and windows and a roof. So, and just because I'm a rebel, I won't go through the door, I go through the windows. That might be, it's a great thing if you do that for effect, for dramatic exit. I jump out of the window and don't go out of the door. But why just doing it because, and that's something that I see a lot. That doesn't make any sense for me. I want to show something. I want to transport something, like you said, T. I want to tell a story of any kind. What you make out of that story, if you see that, you make your own story. If you see the photo, and that story that you see is just as valid as mine. Right, so absolutely. I do something because it works and not because it's a rule. And many rules are, they are rules because they work. And if they work for my photo and make my photo better, improve on that and give me that, what I need, what I want to have, that I use it. And then I'm not 5 years old anymore to say, no, I don't do that. It's like when I was 6, I told everyone I hated spinach, so I didn't eat spinach, even though I actually liked it. But I said, no, I said I won't do that, and so I didn't do it. I think it's crazy to do that as a grown-up artist or grown-up photographer, to break the rules or not follow the rules just because. Then you're compromising on your own photography, as I see it. Okay.
Yeah, people fetishize breaking the rules. That's not good.
Well, you kind of said it. It's like about it's and I think it's more of a broad cultural thing. You know, the bad boy or the bad girl. You're the rule breaker. You're going on your own. You're being the rebel, and it's about the attention and instead and the representation of you as a person, and maybe trying to become the new Picasso or the new Georgia O'Keeffe, you know what I mean, who are doing things that are brand new, when it's not really about, to me, when I start hearing that thing, it's not about the art anymore, it's about other stuff and you as a person, and you trying to create this persona that you may be a rebel, but you know, again, and I'll say that I don't know enough technically about photography. I think I do break rules without knowing. I will say this, I'll have settings that are totally wrong and I'll still get a good picture. So in a sense, sometimes. So I break the rules, but in my writing, I know I break the rules, but not because I want to break the rules, but because the Spanglish, you know, I write in Spanish and in English and I mix them up, but it makes sense to me to the way I'm telling what I'm, you know what I mean? So it's not about the breaking the rules. It's about communicating what I want to say in a way that I want to and that's comfortable for me, but that still the majority of people will understand it. And that is, so yes, I totally agree with you on that. Totally agree with you. But that's the culture that we're in. The culture that we're in is, oh, you know, oh, look, the bad boy, I mean, or the bad girl. Oh, you know, oh, they're breaking the rules. Yeah. And I'm sorry, you know, yeah. Anyway.
How are they doing? I want to give a shout out here to Nikos on our PWS team, because to me, he's kind of a person that does break the rules, but does it in such a great way that, you know, I just like am blown away when I see a lot of the stuff he creates. And I've seen other people try to do similar and it just doesn't work. I don't know why exactly, but you know, it's just great when you can see it.
Because it's not their vision. I mean, you can learn from emulating. You can learn from emulating, but at some point there's imitating and just sticking with that, and then there's imitating to learn and then develop your own, I guess, your own personal, not language, but your own personal dialect within the language, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're at an hour and a half.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't stick around too much longer. I mean, you guys could talk without me, but
No, I don't want to talk to Pete anymore.
Yeah, like I talk to me every day, so I don't have to talk to me.
Yeah, I've been agonizing over whether to say something. Maybe I just want to say something briefly just for some of the folks that follow me. You know, I'm unfortunately going to go under the knife soon and have an operation, so I may not be around too much, but I want you all know that I'm with you in spirit, and you know, it's going to be a tough, this is happening in August, it's going to be a tough 6 weeks after that. I don't know what it's going to do for my Tumblr. You never know. I might be on it more because I'm lying around, but just want folks to know that. So, you know, such a great gang. And I just wish I could do more to, you know, to be part of things, but I'm there for you.
And we're there for you.
Absolutely. Oh, definitely. So, yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Like I said to Pete, I kind of grew up in the family of photography. I grew up in the shadow. I mean, I think my father was a truly great photographer. I don't think I'll ever create anything quite the degree that he did. And that was a pretty amazing, incredible, but also frustrating experience because, you know, I don't know. I'm also a big fan of music, and like, you know, a lot of times children of rock stars like feel like their parents give more attention to their hobbies or their passions than they do to their children. And I kind of mixed feelings about photography growing up. And when he did a lot of shooting of family and friends, I kind of felt he hid behind the camera. And rather than interact with the world, he was happier to sit behind the camera and take pictures of it. And you know, that may be why I don't do street and photography as much anymore. I kind of don't want to fall into that trap. So I don't know. Those are just some of my other feelings about photography in general that I've had to wrestle with. And it's been great to come back and fall in love all over with it again, thanks, I think, to the digital revolution and all that. So I'm just throwing that out to folks.
I want to say,
where I'm coming.
Milman, I don't know if you're also on the chat, T, but Milman writes, "Be well, T." I'm sorry that it was a fascinating discussion on the chat. Sorry that at one point we just had to break up to read that all, and I wish there was a way to save that all in any way. So I don't know if that is possible. I will try to find out if I can get back to it, because great stuff happening on the chat.
Awesome.
So. Yeah, I think more than 1.5 hours. So then let's call it a day for today, right?
Well, thank you guys.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's funny because Milman and I, you saw it. Milman and I got into the spiritual thing, and I just for your information, FYI. I mean, I worked with Milman. We're friends. And I'm just getting teary-eyed now. Just I cry in every one of these. Oh my God! I just realized. Brilliant person, and we also discuss spirituality a lot. I mean, let's face it. One of the courses I was a teaching assistant for him was African American Christianity in the Black Church.
Wow.
But I think that's something that we need to talk about too. The personal satisfaction of photography at some point, and which is whether you want to see it as spiritual or a personal satisfaction, or as T mentioned, that finding your way and finding that satisfaction again. Yeah, how do we think about that? Anyway, that's it. I'm out.
You know, to me, you know, going out in the woods is a spiritual experience. I mean, and you know, it's really my church in a sense. And so I'm really sharing with people something that is very special to me. And I never feel I can fully capture it. That's always a frustration. You know, I want to invite folks in, and now it's great. I feel like when I'm hiking in the woods, I mean, somebody who wrote a description of my work once called it lonely, but you know, it's weird. I'm less lonely me in the woods than I am around a bunch of strangers in the city. I'm not lonely at all, really. And now I have a bunch of folks in Tumblr I feel coming along with me and seeing the stuff as I experience it. So it's definitely spiritual.
And it's that communication. It goes back to that too. Yeah, totally. Totally. I have to tell you though, I about the hiding and about the street photography. One of the things that, like when I've gone to the Pride Fests in Sacramento and in San Francisco and some of the other public events, and even taking portraits, I love hiding behind the camera because I am an introvert. But I also have to say, there's something there. I'm so energized, and I'm so, for lack of a better term, when someone attracts my attention, I'm so in love with that person at that moment, and from what I see in that person, and I wind up saying, quick story, and then I'll shut up. At Pride in San Francisco about 3 years ago, there were these 3 gorgeous young women who were wearing these flowers around their hair and these gorgeous little bikini tops, these like bra tops with little flowers on them. And I went up to those 3 young women and I said, "Can I take your picture? Because, you know, your breasts look so gorgeous in those bikini tops." And I said it, and right, and I said, "Oh my, did I just say that to you?" And they were cracking up, and I got the picture, which I have not left on Tumblr because I posted it and then removed it. I don't want it to go to a porn site. Sadly, that is the reason I love the photo, because it's the 3 of them just posing and having fun, and one of them just couldn't stop laughing. And it's this other guy who I just thought was really cute, but there was something about him that was perfect. And I went up to him and I said, "You know, you're perfect. Can I take your picture?" And his friends looked at me and laughed. And there's a bond. It's just a momentary connection, but there's something that frees me up to talk to people. And again, I'm getting emotional about this. That's just, yeah, it's a spiritual experience. So I understand what you're saying, because I do prefer the loneliness, but I've also, for whatever reason, learned to let go and just trust the moment and the connection. And I love it. I
should protest. You know, I also do politics. That's one of my other hobbies. I call it a hobby because I can't get too invested in actually making things better, or I'll start bumming out. So I just do it for the fun of it. Try to change the world. I'm pretty well known as a local activist. So I go into protests and I shoot those. But I always set it on my camera on point and shoot to make it easy. And I feel like they're not great pictures, even though the content, the subject matter is really, and they're nicely framed and all. But I feel like I'm cheating doing it point and shoot, and I don't feel I can share that with the photo crowd as much. Or I have to do a separate blog or so. I thought about doing that more on my side blog, but no one ever looks at that, so I don't know.
Oh, I don't think, again, getting back to the rules and regulations, there's no such, I don't think there's any such thing as cheating. As Pete's teacher said, you know, yes, I taught you how to work manual, but when it comes to getting the shot, you get the shot.
Yeah, you gotta. I used to try to shoot manual people, and by the time you muck around with the camera, the moment's gone.
Exactly. Anyway, no, I'm not saying anything else. I'm putting my mic on mute.
I really should go, guys. I'm gonna get in trouble with the boss. So.
Thank you, T, so much.
Well, thank you guys. You guys are great. Do you want to say one last thing, Pete?
Yeah, I want to say thank you to all of you on the video, all the 2 of you.
Yes.
And I want to say thank you to all of you on the chat. It was a blast. I was just drawn into the video in the chat, and we should
my t-shirt here.
Continue the topic we had on the chat in one of the next shows, because it's a fascinating, absolutely fascinating topic. Amy Montico writes, "Nice show, boys." Thank you, Amy. And yeah, I think that's it for today. Thank you, T. All the best for your surgery.
Thanks so much.
So, what is it? Pressing thumbs. That's what we say in German. So crossing all the fingers, even my trigger finger.
All that other stuff.
And Christian Augustin writes, "Nice talk." Camelia Ruiz Malinarik writes, "Congrats, guys. Nice show." Matt O'Dwyer says, "Same, thoroughly enjoyable all around." Thank you, Matt. Heiko Mühlfahrt writes, thanks, guys. This is like, it's like the credits after a movie, right? So, yeah, I think that's it.
All right,
Of
good
course,
night
we
to you
have to.
across the pond.
And greetings back.
Okay. Bye.
Leviona writes, thank you. We could make a show with all the just reading the chat messages next time. Awesome. No, it was amazing that we had you in the chat. It's really enriching, enriches really the show, and it's that's why we do that. No, one reason why we do that, to get in contact. Heiko writes, I can add the thanks for the old guys show. So we have 2 old guys there and 1 here. So I have play an old guy as well. So okay. Like always, we close with an applause for our guest. And of course,
Shut up.
For Dr. Fern. No, that was for me. So, yeah, we had a break last month, so we're back, and we'll be back again in August if all goes according to plan. So yeah, this one's for today. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
We
should play the music a bit because it's the beginning music. I hope I didn't forget that thing.
Are we off?
No, we're still on. I want to play the music a bit.
Oh.
Okay, now we'll stop.
Oh, T's gone.